Thank you for checking out the Sportsline podcast on CHCH. I'm Bubba O'Neill. Well, for those that are unfamiliar, once a week we turn from the amazing personal sports stories that our region tend to produce to offer the most lively sports discussion you will find online. Welcome to the Sportsline Square-Off. Well, this graduate of the College of Sports Media is running right along the likes of, former CHCH anchor Phil Perkins and TSN's Adam Scully in the growth of his career. Hamilton's Jason Gaidola learned the ropes in other markets like Thunder Bay and Winnipeg and is blossoming as a dual-threat reporter and weekday anchor covering all the top stories here at CHCH in Hamilton. It's his sophomore appearance on the Sportsline podcast. Jason G., welcome. It's great to have you here, and we'll break down some sports.
Absolutely. This actually feels like I know I was here before, but this still has a first-time feel to it, though. Well, it's exciting to be here.
Well, I always love your opinion, though, and you and I have had plenty of sports discussions at my desk in particular, where we've hammered it out, agree, disagree. So I always think you're a great person to chat with. You always have great sort of stories and insight, and well-educated certainly on all variety of sports, and that's why I think you're just perfect to have in here today.
Much obliged, much appreciated. It's always great, and we always talk. It's going back to the nostalgia. I think we kind of we're simpatico on a lot of stuff going back to like the 90s and those memories, whether hockey, football, still implanted in my brain, and whether it's talking about great players that seem to be forgotten, that kind of get lost in the shuffle, and it's always good reigniting some forgotten elements of certain sports.
Yeah, that is true, and you share a deep passion for your team, which for your teams, which I think is awesome. Now, before we get to the square-off, a couple of things here. Since we last talked, I think that was sort of in mid-February. You've had some kind of added responsibilities around here, which I think, as I talked about off the top, was the growth of your career and the fact that you're doing some reporting as always, but you're getting an opportunity during the week to anchor, and I think that's got to be a lot of fun for you.
Absolutely, and I've been in this spot before too. I made my bones in Thunder Bay, where I did the 11 o'clock anchoring following the 6, and it came much earlier than expected when I first got into it, and it allowed me to actually develop on-air chemistry with somebody else, because we had a sports anchor too, and we were both on the desk at the same time, and now now that I'm doing the 11. I develop a little bit of a chemistry with one of our weather anchors as well. So it's nice to share. It's nice to share that platform with somebody else on screen too as well.
And I guess that's got to be cool for you too, because you've now seen both sides, and I think because you see both sides, you gain an appreciation for what the anchor does and that responsibility, and what the reporter does on a daily basis.
Absolutely, and it's the change. The freshness is always there, always being, not always being on the desk and being out in the field and just getting a feel for your story, whatever it is. So, excuse me. I like the variety. I like the change-up because it keeps me on my toes.
Nicely done. Hey, you're just coming off a trip as well, too. I hear you're coughing there. You've been coughing since his trip came back. A little
it's
trip.
Lingering,
what did Boston do to you?
I got into some trouble there. That's for sure. But I think my immune system is just shot. No, it's been in terms of battling some illness, it's been a little up and down the last couple of weeks. I thought I was making a recovery, then I dipped back down again, and now I think I'm finally in the trajectory up. But Boston was pretty. It's an interesting city, a lot of history, and I'm a sucker for architecture, right? And you go to cities like Boston, Chicago, and you're just in awe. It's like you don't see that kind of architecture often. Going through the different neighborhoods, it just felt. There was so much history there, and it was pretty cool. And believe it or not, most people were nice. I think I met a few rumble tumble Bostonians in there, trying to score those tickets to the Celtics game, and I'm find myself in some sort of
a situation
somewhat heated bargaining for some tickets, because they weren't budging, that's for sure. But it's but for one thing that I can guarantee is Boston is a sports town, and the jerseys are just everywhere, everywhere, and they're lucky because they got two, at least the Bruins and the Celtics, both vying for championships, and that is their standard. They're used to doing that.
Well, and they got spoiled for better the part of 2 decades with the Patriots as well, too. I mean, certainly a city to admire in terms of success with their teams. What did you get to see?
I didn't get to see any of those games. I just didn't. I mean, the value of it. It was pretty expensive. I just chose not to spend my money there because I spent it elsewhere. But I was able to check out the sports bars, and they were packed too. It's not like it's not that it was just it was dead in the streets. It was busy all around TD Garden. Checked out Fenway Park, which was just sensational. It just looked like a real ballpark. And the history, and they had a little bar there called the Bleacher Bar, a nice little spot, just like a regular bar, but tourists are in there. Tour guides are going in there, and they were just getting ready for opening day. The maintenance guys are out there. The lawn is pristine. Tours are going, and it really felt it's a vibe, man, and definitely a trip to go back to, and obviously I think I'd go to a sporting event this time.
And it's funny that it makes me think about a trip I made to Chicago and able to take in a tour of Wrigley. And, hey, we've put in, or at least Rogers has put in millions and millions of dollars to upgrade Rogers, and it's, the back end, the front end, the new food stands and viewing areas. And I respect that they're trying to make it more like a ballpark, because when Rogers Place was built, it just wasn't supposed to be a baseball thing. It was an all facility, football first facility, actually. People forget that. But when you get to those old fields, and Wrigley is just a little bit younger than Fenway, it's amazing. Like you said, the care. If the grass is supposed to be cut to 1.25 inches, it's cut to 1.25 inches.
Yeah.
And there's someone checking that stuff. And you look at the grounds people and the people that work there. The thing that I was always shocked about is that they weren't in their 20s. These are people in their 60s and 70s. They've been working there for that long, and it matters that much to them.
It does, and you're in there. You can feel it.
Yes.
You just feel. I don't know what it is. It's like the ghosts of the past. I don't know. It's just it's an eerie feeling, but it's it just urges you to go watch a game. Because as cool as it was when I left, it was like, you know what, I was cool, but it still didn't do it justice until you actually go to an actual game. And I drove by Wrigley Field too, and I felt it too there. And I'm like, I got to go to a Cubs game, because all around there, that whole Wrigleyville. It's a scene, man.
It is.
It's a scene, and it was one of the most coolest, I guess, baseball atmospheres I was around. I've ever experienced. And again, it was during it was in March, but it was still busy. It still felt like there was a baseball game going on there. So another bucket list item to go back to.
I would highly recommend, and anyone that, baseball's it's probably my fourth favorite sport, but I respected it and I enjoyed so much of it, and I will never stop talking about it, because to me it was that amazing to see it. And then the very next day, go to see the likes of the Cubs and the Cardinals, just old-time rivals. Just it was an amazing game. And it was funny enough, the Cubs won the game in the bottom of the ninth, and it was an afternoon game, and the place went bonkers. It was wonderful. But you ready to square off?
Yes, sir.
Let's do that. Okay, folks, so much to talk about. We're going to start off with the National Hockey League. And, of course, with 2 games remaining for the Toronto Maple Leafs, the Auston Matthews chase for 70 goals has become a big deal. It's the high talking point for many Maple Leaf fans and people in this area. But I will ask you this, Jason. Has the chase for 70 become a distraction for the Maple Leafs?
Yeah, possibly, if the media keeps talking about it. I don't think it will be. I know Sheldon Keefe was not. He kind of pumped the brakes on the hoopla and all. But Auston Matthews, I think he's reaching. I think he's reaching a certain point where this is now second nature, and it seems like scoring 70 may just become second nature to him. So the most important thing is, like, is he going to be the guy to be there when the playoffs come around? Because it's just around the corner. The season's already winding down. The Leafs are kind of already getting in playoff mode. I mean, he's probably going to break it. Most likely, and right now, can he still carry that? I think the question is, start thinking about that form going into the postseason. I don't know. He's just, I sense something different, and I think that consistency and that sharpness is going to be there in the postseason. And now that it looks like they're probably are they set to play Florida? Right now?
They're going to play. It could be Boston. It could be, but I mean, it likely will be Florida, and they will start on the road.
Yeah, and I think there's going to be that revenge on their mind, and I do sense a maturity from this entire roster right now. I know Leaf fans say it all the time, but this actually could be it where they're probably I can see them getting past the first round, and I think Matthews will be there because it's, they want him. I think he's always the guy that you want for them to be carrying them, to carry his team, and I can see him keep going. So I don't think it's a distraction for Matthews, and as long as he's producing, I think that's all that matters.
Well, you know what? I think you said that one of the things you said there was Sheldon Keefe, and I think he wishes this wasn't even going on because, in all honesty, I really believe he wants to rest him for probably the game tonight against Florida, and then the regular season finale one day later, I believe, in Tampa Bay. These playoffs, regardless of whatever happens, are going to start on Saturday for the Maple Leafs, and I think you need to get him rest. And I will say this 1,000 times, is the fact that if he gets 70 goals and they get knocked out of the first round, it's meaningless. It's a personal accomplishment, and you got to think team here. And I would say this, maybe he sits one game. He has to sit one of these games. So whether it's Florida, which I don't think you want to show anything. Like why would you want to play Matthews against Florida tonight? Play him against Tampa Bay, who, if you see them, you'll see them maybe in the conference championship. Why play any of your regulars tonight against this Florida team? You're already starting the goaltender, which we believe should be the backup one in Joe Wall. It just doesn't make any sense to me. You've got to think big picture, because you know what? I know is there a difference between 69 and 70 other than the actual written down number? He's had a tremendous season, possibly an MVP season. Why what is this chase for 70? I get it, but what's more important?
Well, I still think, Keefe, I think he's just trying to really I think he's trying to get it out of everyone's mind, because they're already thinking about the postseason. The question is, I don't know if you can just completely, I don't know if it's wise to completely rest him or anybody else on the team. I think it's important. I can see them managing his minutes. Do you think Keith will go that far and just kind of, hey, Auston, you're only going to play maybe, 16 tonight? Is that a possibility?
Just play him on the power play?
Yeah, just kind of scale him back a little bit so you're not exposing him too much. I could see that happening. How about you?
Maybe, but I just think if he's dressed, any player, as long as he's dressed, he's going to want to play. Players want to play, but they also need to be harnessed, and that's what the job of the coach is. And I know that right now Sheldon Keefe is saying, if I bench him for the next 2 games, I will become the most unpopular person in Toronto. And I think the team would get it. I think they look at the bigger picture. But Leafs Nation and the media, you're right, the media have a lot to do with this too, because they're pumping it up and talking about it every day, just like we are. I think it becomes a bigger story.
I think this story is actually becoming about Sheldon Keefe more than Auston Matthews getting 70, because he's remember at the beginning,
it's driving him crazy.
It's driving him crazy. But remember, at the beginning of the season, they got off to a bumpy start, and there was but fans were wondering, is it time to move on from Sheldon Keefe? So he sounds like a head coach who's still coaching for his job going into this postseason, and again, if they flame out once again, that's going to be the case. So this sounds more like it's a story for Sheldon Keefe rather than Auston Matthews, because I think Matthews is just way too confident, too confident of a player to allow that to bother him or anything. I don't see him shrinking under those types of expectations. Like, scoring to him is like breathing.
It certainly has become the way he's firing the puck this year. And you're right. Sheldon Keefe maybe is coaching for his job, which is unbelievable considering he just signed a 2-year contract extension.
Sometimes those contracts mean nothing, though. All it takes is one ugly exit, and you never know. The conversation changes, right?
With 1 or 2 games left in the National Hockey League season, I think one for the most part, 4 teams, they all have 1 game left. They're all fighting for the last playoff spot in the East in that wild card chase. I'll ask you this, Jason, and a lot of people are really exciting and they're bragging about the NHL and their playoff system. Do you think it's working?
I think so. I think the first round. I think the first round is always the end. That's where the most energy is, because that quest of the cup is such a battle of attrition. It's the wear and tear happens so quickly. So the league is just so adamant on making sure that, hey, we got to get off to the right start. And there's been some. You have to say some of the first round matchups have been always some pretty solid some matchups. And
I know, but do you think it's fair that the Leafs have to play the Florida Panthers? That's great in the first round.
No, and now it's. I think the topic of it going back to the old way, 1-8, is legitimate. I just think that the setup for the first round and having some good matchups in the first round is still a sticking point for the National Hockey League to maintain. And think about it. This is the team that they lost to last year, and now they get to have them in the first round. So I think it helps maintain storylines and rivalries, and I'm only thinking in the lens of a Leaf fan. Mm-hmm. Because I feel like they go through this every couple of years where they almost have a new rivalry, right? It was, the Flyers at one point, and then it was the Devils, and it's Ottawa, and it's just, and now who knows if this could be, a new playoff opponent that the Leafs are trying to overcome, because that appears to be that's what it could strike, like what it could be here, especially when you have such a team that played such an aggressive style, and the Leafs, I feel like the Leafs. Brass, they love to overcome that aggressive team that they could not, that tougher team that
like the Bostons,
and a Boston type team that they want to get over that. They want to prove to the world that they can beat those teams, and I think Florida is probably going to be one of those teams, right? And I know they want Boston, but Florida is going to be that team, because just for the simple fact that they lost to them last year.
Well, and they're one of the tough, or at least one of the top defensive teams in the National Hockey League. Who knows what's going to happen with their goaltending situation, because we saw Bobrovsky go on a roll last year like no one ever expected. And the fact that he didn't even start the playoffs last year, and then he just through injury, got an opportunity to play, and then he just ripped off an amazing play. Here's the crazy thing, okay? Now, this is what tonight, I guess the Leafs have Florida, and then they have Tampa. Washington, and again, now we're talking about the wild card situation here. Washington are at Philadelphia. We're looking at Detroit, at Montreal. Philadelphia are playing the Islanders, or make that Pittsburgh are playing the Islanders, and Philadelphia are playing Washington. Look how close this race is right now, and the fact that some of these teams are actually playing each other to jockey for that. Look, Tampa Bay, they're running away with that top spot, so basically it is for the second spot right there. I think it's insane, but I'm going to say this. I know the league are bragging about the fact, look at us, we've got things down basically to the final night of the regular season. But do you not believe that it's influenced by the fact that this team basically has this loser point? The teams can't run away from each other. And I know maybe people say, well, then it becomes boring at the end of the year because everyone has separated itself. To me, this is kind of artificial.
I can see your point there. It's driving. There could be elements there. You could drive that forced parity if you want to form it in that type of way. But I mean, historically, I've always thought the East always appeared this way, even in the old days when they did 1-8. I don't know. The Eastern Conference always just seemed to be a little tighter. This is much tighter than I can recall, and I think it has. I don't know. Maybe it sticks out because the franchises are Washington, Philadelphia, Pittsburgh. And I mean, obviously, Detroit's been kind of under the radar for a long time.
Marquee franchises.
These are the marquee franchises that were always like regulars in the playoffs, and now you're seeing them in this position. They're a position of, I guess you can say, weakness, because I don't see any of these teams being cup contenders at all. But I mean, at the end of the day, everybody's fighting for viewers, right? They want to make sure that everyone's watching right up until the end, to the very end. And there's been some good finishes where, whether the league might end on, I think historically it used to end on Sundays. Now this is the right time of year to do it, but I think you're looking at a race that I think some fans may even be curious. Will there be a tiebreaker? Will there be will a team be decided through some sort of secondary tiebreaker? I think that's what's sticking in the back of my mind. And if there's a controversy there, then there could be some discussion about some sort of some change into how they can handle it. Maybe I'm going a little too crazy there, but that is sitting in the back of my mind. I'm thinking will some sort of secondary tiebreaker be the deciding factor if there is a tie in points?
Well, yeah, let's go back to the board there, because I mean, there's a possibility of that happening right now, because I think you have the likes of Detroit and the Capitals that they're actually tied on points, but Washington gets the nod based on a tiebreaker, which I can't tell you exactly which the first tiebreaker is. And I would think, because I'm looking at wins, and right now, well, Detroit has more wins, so shouldn't they be ahead? I'm not quite sure. Maybe the overtime loss is an issue. But nonetheless, maybe there's head-to-head that I haven't looked at yet. But regardless, though, there is a possibility of that actually happening. Of these teams, of three of the teams actually tying, and it'll have to come down to that. And you're right. If it comes down to the fact that a tiebreaker has to decide it, well, maybe the NHL brags about it. That look how tight our team, our league is to get that final spot. You can brag about it, but I just think it's kind of artificial in the sense based on the way they hand out their points. I think if you went to more of a soccer system, and I know that the old timers would tell me you can't do that because then it screws up all the historical values of what we've seen over the years. Well, at some point you have to change. And to me, 3 points for a win. We wouldn't have this.
Yeah, and who knows if this could prompt the league to not go back to the old way, but even tweak their current format by, will they go the NBA route and do some sort of play-in if there is some?
That's coming. That's coming.
That's going to come.
It's happening.
It's more playoff games, right?
Revenue,
more money.
It's revenue. Exactly. That's happening. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah. So I could see a possible play. I mean, them adjusting a play-in scenario that can definitely settle those types of scenarios where, because it could be a buzzkill when it's like, yeah, three teams are tied. Oh, but so and so goes through, and it's feels anticlimactic going into the postseason.
But isn't it better than a tiebreaker? A one-game showdown?
Yeah. I mean, naturally, I can't disagree with that. I mean, the tiebreaker just, again, like that anticlimactic feeling, and it doesn't... You're having to wait right after your game is done for them to settle the score, unless it's already kind of predetermined. It depends on what the circumstances are, but I mean, I could see this being a precursor to saying like, hey, it's time to maybe start doing some one game elimination here.
Matthews, McDavid,
oh boy,
McKinnon, Kucherov. Now, it's important to define that the National Hockey League defines its Hart Trophy winner as the most valuable player to its team. So I'll ask you, with those four names in play, and their stats are unbelievable for all four of them for different reasons, your NHL Hart Trophy MVP is, Jason?
I can't believe I'm saying this, but I think I'm probably going to go with Auston Matthews. Just for the fact of, and again, maybe there's some reasoning that McDavid has just been so dominant in taking it he takes it home almost every year, and I know it sounds bad to say, but out of necessary, it's like if somebody else can make a case, any case, I would give it to them. But I think, and especially after what the start that they had, you look at two teams of the Oilers and the Leafs, both had bumpy starts, and they just roared right back. And it's still clear that McDavid is the rocket fuel to that hockey team. With
got a coach fired.
Yeah, clearly. But I'm going to roll with Matthews just for the simple fact that I think the Leafs just look look more determined. They look more mature, and I think he's taken the bull by the horns on this hockey team, and 100 plus points. The 70 goal factor is obviously going to be in play, and I just think that they look more like a contending team, even more so than the Oilers at this point. I know it's a toss up. I don't think there is any wrong answer here, but I'm just going to go with Matthews in the simple fact that I think that the Leafs really, and I believe the Oilers have a few more points than they do. As I'm seeing right now. No, those are the standings. But I'm gonna go with Matthews because I just think he's a little. I think someone else deserves it. I know it sounds weird. I know it sounds kind of odd, but I just think someone else. I think it's someone else's turn to take home that trophy. And
so you believe in voter fatigue for MVP is what you're telling me?
Yeah.
Because you know what, Connor McDavid is the best player in the league every year, in my opinion. Right? You could give it to him. It's almost getting to the point of the either LeBron in this era or the Jordan effect in his day. That really, yeah, okay. Charles Barkley won an MVP. Yeah, really. Come on now. Jordan was the best player that year, particular year too. But people got bored of it. I don't know how you can give it to Auston Matthews. The guy has. If we go back to the board, please. How can you give it to a guy that's got 38 assists? 38 assists. Okay, the 69 or 70 goals is something we haven't seen in 20-odd years or so since Solani. Had 76 in his rookie season, I think 92. I don't know. To me, McKinnon's the guy. He drives the best team of the four, in my opinion. Kucherov, who could have 100 assists. McDavid, who already has 100 assists. Only, 3 or 4 guys have ever done that. That just recently accomplished. I get 70 goals, and I think there has to be a premium based on goals over assists as well, too, because I think when you get all sticky with assists, because was it a secondary assist or a first assist? And sometimes a secondary assist is garbage.
No, and I know, and that's...
But 38 assists compared to 99, 87, and 100. And I know the numbers don't balance out in terms of goals, but boy, McKinnon looks real balanced to me on a team that probably is better than the Leafs.
I can't, that's very hard to disagree with. I mean, I don't know. I think the Leafs are kind of they look a little. I just think they look a little more mature. If you were to pair them in a 7-game series with the Oilers and the Avalanche, say just at a head to head, I mean, it would be a pretty close series. I would probably take away Kucherov. And I know those are some video game numbers, but just you have to look at the standings. And I mean, I don't think they're they're all relatively close. Obviously, Colorado's a little bit better. They're a little more deeper. And
can I just say one thing about Kucherov? Is that Point is the next highest scoring guy, and he doesn't even have 100 points. So Kucherov is more than 40 points ahead of the next player on his own team. And based on I guess the true meaning of MVP in the NHL for the Hart Trophy, I don't know.
And I think that's going to be the bottom line factor too at the end is and give kudos to the to the National Hockey League on maintaining, and the voters maintaining a certain standard of how they view this award. But I mean, do you do justice for your sport if you're always giving it to the same player all the time? I mean, maybe. I guess McDavid probably is the exception, but I think if you take away the way, where Tampa Bay is, and you look at the other 3 teams, they're a lot relatively close. I think the goal scoring prowess of Auston Matthews has just had such a big impact on the Leafs, and he is clearly their best. Even at under 40 assists, he's still by far their best player. So he definitely, as much as McDavid is the rocket fuel to the Oilers, Matthews is the rocket fuel to the Leafs, and I know, I guess you could say the voter fatigue is definitely playing a factor in this for me.
Interesting to think that each one of them play with superior players. Like, I mean, some people would say, well, he carries the team and doesn't play with anyone. Well, Kucherov plays with Point and Stamkos. McKinnon plays with a number of actually guys on that team. You think of McDavid plays with Draisaitl, and Matthews plays with Nylander on the power play, at least, and Marner as well, too. Like, it's insane to think of that each one of these guys. It's going to be, I guess, probably the closest race we've seen for the Hart Trophy maybe ever. So that'll be fun to watch at the end of the year.
Absolutely.
Because remember, this is regular season voting, guys. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. has I think it's actually dipped below 194 right now going into the taping as we are right now going into this podcast. Are you concerned?
Yeah, I'm concerned more for the Blue Jays, actually. I think we're getting to that point where his contract ends at the end of 2024. It's bad news for the Jays because I think he could have been he could have been poised to be a trade deadline moving piece for the Toronto Blue Jays, and if he's not playing well, you're not going to be able to trade him if he's batting like this. And to me, it seems purely mechanical. I don't know if pitchers have caught up to him, and they just maybe he's easy to read, and how his tendencies. But this is he's definitely going in the wrong direction for a prospect that such big genes, right? You're talking about the son of a Hall of Fame baseball player, and you didn't think he was going to be in the spot because he came in the major leagues at such a young age with a lot of impressive numbers and impressive hitting ability, and you saw it right away. And now it's just he's kind of getting into that odd. And it's not a sophomore slump, but I mean that earlier career. Because he's only 25, right? And I think it's not good for the Toronto Blue Jays. It's definitely not good for him, clearly. And I don't think that it's going to be a good thing for the Jays because I mean if things are not looking good up to the trade deadline, I can see Shapiro being ready to move some pieces, and you would think that he was going to be one of the first guys to go. So it's not good. It's not good for the ball club. That stuff.
At some point, right? Like because of the finances of the sport, right? You cannot keep Bo Bichette and Vladimir Guerrero Jr. forever. At some point, one of the two of them, because I would think, and you're right. Vladdy, his numbers are not good right now. They were subpar based on his standards, or at least what we believe are his standards last year as well. So we're going on 2.5 seasons of his numbers being rather disappointing. He already went to arbitration. They didn't agree on arbitration. He won the arbitration case, and it was weird. And that's sometimes arbitration can bring out the evil in the team and the players sometimes. And the fact that they were less than $1 million apart, and they couldn't figure it out. Right? And some people, like we had a Steve Simmons here, well-known decorated writer here, that said Vladdy should have just taken what was offered to him and go out and prove it. Yeah. But it ended up the arbitration judge gave the ruling in favor to the player, right, and gave him, what was it? I believe it was $19 million for this season. So there maybe is some bad blood between the team and the player right now, but at some point it's going to be Bichette or it's going to be Guerrero. And after all the Vladdy hype that we have absorbed for the last 5 years, it is disappointing to me to see him playing this way. And I'm not just talking about just with the batting average. There's the errors that we see, the moments, of course, going back to last year, the sleepiness on second base, which we'll never forget. And even sometimes some of the base running that we've seen in the early point of the season. And I don't know about you. Have you noticed this, that every time he gets called out at the bases, he's yelling at the dugout, hey, recall, replay. I'm not saying any of it has to do with effort, but boy, he just doesn't look like the guy that we kind of thought. And no, remember, those stats, he's not going to be below the Mendoza line forever. Like, that number is going to get better, right? The power is going to increase. We've only played 17 games. because he is a streak shooter like a lot of these guys are. But I don't know if Vladdy's as good as we thought he was going to be.
I have to say so far, I mean, if you look at things in totality, he's been a pretty somewhat disappointing. And I'd imagine that, like, I'm expecting him to still maintain at least, you still got to maintain at least a 260 average. And you knew that he was going to be your classic cleanup guy. But I don't know if it has something to do with, confidence, and maybe not wanting to be there. I'm not sure if, his attitude doesn't. I mean, I know maybe you were mentioning about him always calling for reviews, but I mean, I've always seemed that he comes off as someone who seems to be happy where he is, though. I don't know if it's just has something to do with his teammates, but I don't know. Do they need to get some? They need to switch up the hitting coaches. Do they need to?
I thought they brought back the same guy, but like, I mean, they've gone through multiple ones in the last 3 to 4 years. Like,
right, and I think it doesn't even feel like he's not playing well, but it also, considering that everyone else hasn't been hitting as well, sometimes the rest of the team's struggles can overshadow this a little more. So I almost feel like he's actually getting away with his bad play a little bit, because the attention is not all solely on him. So I don't know. I mean, you got to look at how he plays the rest of this month and look how he's playing in May. And if I'm the Blue Jays, as soon as he starts picking up his game, that is probably going to be your only window if they are going to move on from him and get something in return. But I don't know. The Jays are going to be in a very, very weird situation if he doesn't improve at all and they can't move him, if they can't seem to make the team better. But it's going to be a tough one. I don't know.
Yeah, it will be difficult, because you're right. I mean, you want to, if you're going to trade him, you want to pay him at the real value and not well below value, because full well, if you trade him somewhere, he's going to return to the 300 mark and he's going to be hitting 40 bombs a year, and you'll be like, oh my goodness, we totally screwed that up. Hey, Rory McIlroy is reported. This is crazy to me.
Yeah.
Rory McIlroy is reportedly close to signing with LIV on a reported $850 million deal. Now, we are hearing word on this day, just moments ago, that his agent is saying this is just trash talk. Do not believe what you hear. But do you believe this to be true?
I would not be surprised. Wasn't that the same? Wasn't that the same issue with John Rahm?
Oh,
too?
yeah.
This is not true. This is not true, and then it ends up becoming true. If that money's on the table, I'm sorry, but and I know Rory McIlroy was one of the few who was on the campaign trail against LIV.
He was the biggest figure.
He was the biggest one. I wasn't sure if it was him or Tiger, but
Tiger too. But Tiger was in the. He didn't say anything big.
But I would not be surprised if this is true. And this is bad news for the PGA. Like, it just gets even worse. And again, I don't think it has anything to do with the fact that the PGA still doesn't have good players, but all your marketable stars are leaving, and it's gonna put them in a much weaker position. It's gonna mount the pressure on the tour to do something with LIV. I mean, I know there was chatter about a merger, or some sort of partnership, but the tour is becoming less and less relevant if you keep losing all these stars, and it's only going to come down to those special tournaments, the majors, and some of those marquee tournaments that they all play in. It's going to be bad for their brand, and I can't imagine if they lose McIlroy. Tiger can't keep carrying the sport as that much longer.
Yeah, it's not even a joke, because when Tiger, the first 2 days at the Masters, where were all the crowds following Tiger?
Yeah.
48 years old, all broken down, shoots 84, the worst he's ever had on Saturday. But yet Tiger's there. Tiger's maybe in contention. People are, and of course the TV stations are showing every Tiger shot. It's crazy.
It's nuts, and I think that but that's the golf's that's their bread and butter. It's not going to be like, I think the name. This is why the names aren't so important, and LIV have scooped them all up. And how do you how do you bounce back from that? I mean, are you gonna keep relying on younger golfers that keep coming up and riding the coattails on?
Well, you just keep telling me Scottie Scheffler is the best player in the world, which he may well be.
Yeah,
but this is, I don't know if Scottie Scheffler has relatives in Canada or within distance of where we are right now. But Scottie Scheffler, come on.
Yeah,
no personality. Like,
we need personalities. Here's I think and this will come down. I think it'll come down to this. At some point, the PGA is going to have to. I don't know if they're going to have to share. They're going to have to share some sort of broadcasting deal, maybe to kind of make up for this if they do lose Rory McIlroy. That's just my best guess. And yeah, I don't know. They're going to.
Rory, I hate LIV. These are words said by Rory McIlroy on a microphone. I hate LIV. I hate everything about LIV.
Now, the PGA, the diehards who are totally against everyone leaving, I know there's lots of them out there that were totally against the stars going to the LIV. I'm telling you, they will turn, because they're not going to. Everyone's going to go to where all those recognizable faces are, and Rory. The funny thing is about Rory too. He was pegged to be the next, right? Mm-hmm. Nike's next big golf star. Yep. I mean, you can argue on how if he's lived up to that billing, but Rory is still that name. I mean, he's still one of the sexier names that you want to have on your.
Sure,
on your
he's number 2 ranked in the world.
Number 2 ranked on the world, and it's going to be really bad for the PGA. They got to figure something out for the sake of their own sport, because will it get to the point where now people are going to be tuning into the majors, and the rest of their tour schedule is deemed irrelevant? Will they take away tournaments? Will they reduce it? Probably not. I mean, that's just
they're trying to money. They're desperately trying to jack up, at least the PGA, jack up the earnings in each particular tournament now, because LIV are just so out of control in terms of the money that the winner, the individual winner, and the team winners. I mean, these guys are getting rich, like $850. If this is true, $850 million. Right? And again, and I know I've been going off about Rory and all the things that he has said in the past, the protection of the tour, apparently starting up this Monday night golf thing with Tiger to try and bring back more attention to the PGA. But at the end of the day, like, was it Ted DiBiase in wrestling? Everyone's got a price.
Yep.
$850 million to eat and swallow my words.
And again, and I've always believed that everyone does have a price, and I mean, 850. This is unprecedented money, and this is a sign where, a lot of investors out in the Middle East, they're taking over the sports world right now.
It's true.
They are with a lot of the oil money, a lot of the royalty money from the Middle East. They're getting their hands on everything.
F1, soccer, everything. Tennis. I'm hearing that there would be no WTA without the Saudi money.
Yeah,
like no women's tennis without Saudi money, and they're just pumping money. It's endless. Endless, and the PGA can't keep up, and the North Americans cannot keep up.
They're gonna have to do something with at least from a TV product point of view. If they want to save the rest of their tour, they're gonna have to do something. They're gonna have to merge to some degree if they want to be able to recoup whatever they're losing.
WNBA had its draft last night, televised all 3 rounds in a hall in Brooklyn, very fancy, for the first time charging ticket prices, sold out in 15 minutes, big high-class event. This WNBA class, or at least the last senior class of NCAA players going up to the NCAA, could be the most decorated we've seen maybe ever. So the question I'll put to you there, Jay, is will the WNBA draft class of 2024 lift, not the NCAA, but lift that professional women's basketball to the highest level on and off the court?
Definitely, because I think the WNBA was already showing improvements from the ratings going into last year. I think they saw a jump, that's a considerable jump, and I think it was like 20+%, almost 30%. So they were already gaining I think the TV product in general has been has grown a lot better. Fans are becoming a little more familiar with the game, but this new crop of talent, yeah, this is going to be like, you know, the 84 draft or what for the WNBA, and obviously Caitlin Clark is a huge part of that reason for why the hype is going to be there. And it's going to, I think it's going to give the league a chance to finally maybe get into a more parity situation with many of the teams, because I believe that the last few years, it's either been the Liberty or the Aces. They've kind of had a stranglehold on the league. So for the sake of for their own product, I think there's a shot where you might see some other franchises finally find their footing. And I believe, Caitlin's going to Indiana. I believe they have one title. One WNBA title
in the past, yeah.
In the past, but forgive me if I forget how long ago that was. But knowing where the stars are going to be too, like take Caitlin Clark, she's going to a market in Indiana, which is probably, a good fit. Maybe Rule Star moves into another traditional rural place that has a long history of basketball.
Yep.
It could do a lot of wonders, and I know that they've already spruced up the national TV slots for their games. And then you have the other draft class is loaded. There's a lot of people are fans. Angel Reese is going to be obviously a talked about name. She's going to Chicago. I think there's going to be a nice spread around, and also too, I believe we're seeing kind of like a generational split here. You still have some stars that are aging in the WNBA right now, and you got this new crop, and it's all about building certain storylines, and I think certain players being in certain markets, and then you kind of have this generational gap, and I say that in a good way, that could generate some good storylines. I could see the next couple of years. Then this is the best. You're probably it's the best. They're definitely going to see it, and finally you could probably see a league that will probably ground out some profit, which they've been striving to do. Especially with the fact that salaries went up as well.
And still not really much, because I think Caitlin Clark's deal, her rookie deal, is I think a 3-year deal, and I don't even think she breaks $100,000 in a year.
No, and she's and again, I know it may seem a little bit unfair to compare Caitlin Clark to the rest.
She's the poster woman right now. Like
she's going to be making how much money from endorsements. So, but I think they've caught I think they're in a perfect situation right now, just for the simple fact that the product was already improving from a TV perspective as early as last year, and now they're kind of breaking through at the right time as the product is ascending, and I think they will take them into that next level. It should be. I think this season is definitely going to be interesting to watch, and how it unfolds could also help them determine how far they're probably going to ascend. But I think the WNBA is definitely in a better place than it's ever been.
It certainly has been. And I, I hate going here, but I have to, because I think it is an issue. And we did see that with the Angel Reese 2 years ago. And Caitlin Clark issues between the two, or at least on the court, the issues between the two of them. There was nothing between the two off the court, but they were two competitive women that played hard, and one won, and one's going to win, and one's not going to win. The funny thing is, I think there's hate to graze it, a race issue here. Because you've got a lot of these black women that have played the sport, as you said, some of them for a long time, that have achieved great things. And some of them have won national and NCAA championships along the way. Maya Moore comes to mind right now. I think of someone like Caitlin Clark that she has not won a championship. She's still chasing a ring and will retire in the NCAA without a ring. But now she's the hot topic right now, right? Everyone's talking about her. Now, it's kind of like the Tiger effect. You ride this because your sport's going to new places that it's never been before because of one individual. But don't be fooled. There's a lot of these other women that have been drafted that are rivals, in-ground rivals of Caitlin Clark, and many of them just happen to be black. And you're getting a lot of social media coverage saying, how can everyone keep calling this girl a GOAT? And she's not a GOAT and she's won nothing. She's scored tons of points and broken records. Can't take that away from her. But ultimately, you want to win a championship. So this kind of heat, if I'll call it that, will continue right into the WNBA. And I think what do we love in sports? Rivalries. And I think this is going to just ignite for many years to go.
Yeah, and I see your point, because I think that's where a lot of the, if you look at the viewership on some of the college basketball games, I mean, I was only able to I only caught a little bit of the LSU game because I was driving home, and I got home. I caught the fourth quarter, and I caught some of the national title game. And I think like that, and I'm sure the WNBA is probably, and maybe in a large part the NBA is probably watching this carefully, because if you look at it from a PR perspective, I think a lot of people did tune in because of that, because of probably those racial components where rural Iowa versus Southern LSU, and people play into that, and it reminds me of the Magic versus Bird element that in the 80s, and it sold, right? You remember it did sell for the NBA.
There was nothing bigger at the time.
Nothing bigger, and there was that racial component to it. I mean, think about it. You have the down and dirty Boston Celtics, hard nose playing in the dark garden versus the West Coast flash of fast paced Showtime Lakers, and then there was. And people played those racial stereotypes against each other, and I don't know. That was a different time. I don't know how well that will work now, because there's the level of sensitivity is a lot higher right now, and I think the league probably should be a little careful on how they probably set these storylines.
Yeah, I just think that's a fan thing, right? I don't think that you're right. There's a sensitivity thing, but in our world right now, for sure, the leagues would never ever go there. But don't think that they're not thinking there that its fan bases aren't going after this, because it's out there. Like, players are saying it. Like, not just fans are saying it. Players are talking about it. And there's a certain amount of who is this girl? She's done nothing. She's got to prove herself in this WNBA, and wait till she gets to the top level. So again, it's all reasons to watch at the end of the day.
Absolutely.
Right?
And I think there was, and I did feel like there was this coordination, like everybody was rooting for Caitlin to win. And I think that I think it's human nature there's always going to be people that resent that, right? It's when the whole world is cheering on somebody, there's just going to be some resistance it could be from anywhere, where it's just like, well, why is everyone cheering for this? Why is this person so special? Like, look at all these great players that just did all these great things. And the loser gets all the headline. Like that bothers a lot of people from just a human nature point of view. So I mean, again, Caitlin Clark was just. Again, she rode. I think her popularity also, I think, had a lot to do with the fact of Iowa basketball becoming such a huge product. She's at the forefront of it, and I always find like teams or players from like certain rural areas of the United States, because they're in a rural place, there's just more fans that can cheer that on and support it from a regional perspective. Same elements of the southern United States. Sometimes the South just always seems to like pull for each other, and so many different aspects, whether it's sports, music, whatever, they support each other, and I can see that element carrying over from Iowa. For that Caitlin Clark fever. But Caitlin's, I think she is going to be the star of the WNBA, especially if she's hitting those threes and she's dishing the ball out the way she does. So either way, the league's in a great spot for her to build on her and all those other stars, because again, the draft class is deep, and there's a lot of talent to build on there. So, and hopefully the league, they do it right.
I don't know about you, but this Raptors season, it's been tough. It's been really, really tough, and both you and I work in a professional place where me especially have to follow this team and watch games, and it's been hard. It's been painful. On the other side of this camera right now is our director Chantal, who I shared and embraced a championship with that night, and dropped tears. It was wonderful in 2019. Now they're in 12th place. Their record has completed at 25-57. And now I hear they're raising ticket prices by 5%. Is that fair or foul?
It's fair. I'm going to say, and I only say that because I think that because they've reached the point where they've matured as a franchise that these kind of raises are justified. And I'm sure a lot of it's probably inflationary to begin with, but I mean, Raptor tickets were already fairly expensive as it is, and I think at the back of our minds we knew this day would come where, after that championship, after they won that title in 2019, there is going to be the day where it's like, okay, they're not going to be a great basketball team again. There's going to be some sort of rebuilding phase, and those ticket prices are not going to come down. You know, those 20 years ago when you can find a pretty decent ticket, those are no more. You know, the Raptors are the most valuable entity under that MLSE conglomerate, and sports are becoming more and more expensive. I can't imagine it, the Raptors ever lowering their ticket prices when they could put a freeze on them, couldn't it?
Definitely. This has been hard. To our loyal fans, we're going to put a freeze on the high price of tickets because we're going to do better next year.
And who knows if there's. I mean, there could be a lot of reasons. Maybe the franchise thinks that they'll be able to turn it around next year. I don't know. With Masai Ujiri still there, I'm always reserving that right that he will make a move or two that can get that team back into at least contention for the playoffs. So maybe the franchise have just kind of looked what they have and thinking, okay, this is going to be our next move, and they're still thinking in the short term, so they're not going to be able to reduce their bottom line at all. But they've reached that mature stage where they know they don't have to lower it, and I guess it's only going to take a fan backlash for them to at least freeze it or lower it. So. This is the price. This is the price of having a winner, right? Oh. So, and if you're not a bottom tier franchise anymore, I think the Raptors have finally reached a certain echelon in the NBA where they can justify those hikes. Small hike, but still justified.
Still a hike. Now, can you imagine if you were one of the people that, you put down your hard-earned cash at the beginning of the season for games in February and March and April, because it was a particular team you wanted to see. The Lakers are coming to town, which I think was relatively recent, and they only come once a year. And you put down your expecting to see OG Anunoby, expecting to see Pascal Siakam, and who did you see? Grady Dick. Come on.
There's not. I can understand if it's justifiable.
It's tough.
I can understand if it's justifiable if you had a franchise player. And we've talked about this before. We're entering into territory where the cost of going to sporting events, it's going to be a big concern. Now, Toronto is going to be able to maintain it just because it's Toronto. There's enough people there who can make enough money to buy those tickets, and they're not going to. You're never going to see it in a city in Toronto. No. Anywhere else, for sure, right? And this is going to be, but this is going to. Almost Toronto feels like they're a lucky case because there's a whole bunch of other franchises in, say, like the National Basketball Association. They're struggling to get fans, so there's going to be that imbalance of all these teams of being able to maintain their revenue streams, and some others there's going to be a large chunk that won't be able to. So. Thank your lucky stars for the Raptors that they are a rich team. But
they're not going anywhere. And you're right. There is security finally. I know there were people many years ago that thought this would never work and that the basketball would never work. The NBA was a fad. Even if they win a championship, it'll go away. No, I mean that's not the truth. They're here forever. It's just tough to watch. And I mean,
it's tough to
bring
watch.
back the Sprite Kids Zone or something. And let me see if I can stuff my bum in one of those seats. Final one here, Jason. The Buffalo Bills are slated to move into the new stadium in 2026. O.J. Simpson, who is currently on the Wall of Fame right now in their old facility at Highmark Stadium, Rich Stadium, whatever you want to call it. There's a big question mark in Buffalo, and a big question being asked in the city of Buffalo right now and in Western New York is that when they move into the new stadium in 2026, should O.J. Simpson, who just recently passed, have his name restored to their Ring of Honor? Yes or no?
Oh boy, I know this is controversial. I'm going to say yes, only because he's already up there at the current stadium. You know, Highmark Stadium. It's you. The bottom line factor is, even though as much as people have their opinion on whether he had committed a first degree murder, and I know that it seems pretty lopsided to believe, but the fact of the matter is the court had acquitted him. He was acquitted, right? And I don't know how you can justify taking that down. I mean, if there was a widespread movement where they just said, okay, we're going to take him out of the Hall of Fame, and wherever, I'm not sure how he's being memorialized at USC. But I can understand if there was a ground movement where there was an agreement that he was going to be removed from these elements. But the fact of the matter is, by the letter of the law, if he hadn't done that, quote unquote, I don't know, but you can't. There is no justification to do it. Yeah, and he's already up there as it is. And I know it's going to be a bad PR issue, but you have to keep him up there. I'm not saying that the league should celebrate it, but I think it's but in the spirit of not setting a bad precedent, I think it's best to keep that his name up there, however you feel about it. And because remember, this is just purely about football, and what he did in the National Football League as a bill, it's just too great to erase it. Just like that. Right?
And you're right. His name is up there, or at least was originally put up there, because of his accomplishments on the field. But the crazy thing is, along the way of putting up those incredible accomplishments, he became the face of Buffalo, in a city that, especially in those days, maybe not so much now, because they've done a lot of work towards raising their standards in the city of Buffalo and towards what it looks like and whatever. And there's still so much going on in that city that they used to be called the armpit of America, except they had the juice. They had OJ, and he was this Hollywood-like star who had opportunities that no other players, especially black players, got at that time. Like, he was the first to really transition from the football field to being a sideline reporter. Monday Night Football. People who aren't, are too young to understand this, and the older folks will understand, there was no bigger property on television than Monday Night Football. Like the Beatles, it was massive. And here's OJ with a microphone, transitioning. The movies that he did, Hollywood star. He had this status. Yet we do know what happened. And you're right. Court of law said what they said. Like it or not, I find it hard to take him down from there. And I think that's why he's still on the wall. I think that's why he's still in the Hall of Fame, is because I don't think you can. Well, I don't think you can do it based on your opinions of what you think happened in the second part of his life.
Exactly. And again, I think that's why you're entering a bad territory. And I think it'll be it's open season if they were to remove him from, like, say, the wall or the Hall of Fame, if that were be it the case.
Ty Cobb was a well-known racist, one of the greatest baseball players of all time.
Right.
He's in the Hall of Fame.
He's in the Hall of Fame. So then if you're going to start, so let's just say for the sake of argument, if you're going to start taking OJ, then I'm like, well, then you might as well take out probably 70% of everybody, because then if you want to talk about, quality of human, then these memorials and these the Hall of Fames, like, they'd be very small place, because there's a lot of great athletes that did some bad things. And I'm not saying not murder, but still, though,
I mean, Kobe Bryant.
Yes, for certain people who've conducted themselves, like, say, prior to, like, being inducted to the Hall of Fame, to voters, you don't think of course those things are taken into consideration. But if it already happened after the fact, I mean, when you go back and you reverse something, like, you're talking about erasing. You're talking about undoing decision, already stone cold decision making, ironclad decision making. You would have to undo everything. It would be, I don't even know if like you're talking about players, like families are going to get involved. Like it would get so ugly to do that. And again, it goes back to the letter of the law. Like what is the letter of the law? It would mean nothing if you were to say, yeah, you know what, we're pulling OJ out because we think that he's a murderer. And, you know, even regardless of what the court says, the court of public opinion is going to determine this. It's just too dangerous of a territory. I think the bill is just. I'm not saying you should take a moment to memorialize him, but at least leave his name up in the wall and to the you know, at the very most.
I think you nailed it there, because I think what the Bills have done is that every year someone goes up there, and what they've done is, ever since all the stuff went down with OJ, is that when they do put a new name up there, they invite the people that are still alive to come and join the ceremonies, but they have not extended that invitation for years to OJ for obvious reasons, right? So I guess that's the way they have dealt with it over the years, because it would be, yeah, I mean, had OJ and number 32, OJ Simpson comes on the field, walks on the field, you know, it would just it would be a bad situation, because you had 75,000 people, well, half of them cheering them, half of them booing him. It just not good for a Hall of Fame ceremony.
No, and again, you never know, because there could be family, like, you never know, there could be family members out there of that person who have nothing to do with their you know, alleged doings, or whoever. Just say anybody who's had a bad history of whatever. And, you know, when they're especially when they've already passed on, then you have family members that still have. Yeah. You can't. I don't know. It's tough, because then you're putting. I feel like you're putting those family members on blast. And I'm just, I don't know. I guess from a personal belief, I just have, now that OJ's already gone, it's like he's gone, and I'm not really big on speaking ill of the dead, right? So
tell that, what was it, Kris Jenner? Yeah. Good riddance. Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I'm not saying I'm going to say anything good, but I'm just saying, like, I think OJ he's passed, he's moved on. Just, you know, leave the name up there, but, you know, I think it's best not to mention his name, but as long as his name's up on the wall, I just think I don't think that just because you're moving stadiums, and that you should be able to reassess what you've already done in your old stadium, because it's still the home of the Buffalo Bills. It's still part of that lore. It's best to keep that consistency regardless of what the PR backlash is.
Hey, this has been awesome talking to you here, Jay. I mean, some controversial subjects, some subjects that are uncomfortable, and you've had some wonderful responses. So certainly I'll see you in the newsroom, and thanks for joining us here on the Sportsline Square-Off.
Great stuff. Thanks, Bubba.
Right on. Hey, folks, we do love talking sports from a local, provincial, as you see, national, international perspective. If you do know of an athlete, team, or event to promote, the Sportsline Podcast want you. Contact us on many of CHCH's social media platforms, and we'll get you right here on the Cozy Couch. And while you're at it, please comment, hit the thumbs up, like, and subscribe button, because we do appreciate your feedback. For the amazing minds and hands that do make this podcast possible on a daily basis, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you tomorrow.